Hello everyone, good day, special ito instructor Miss Almera Boncales. For today's video, help me to examine or analyze the story that I have chosen entitled Hamlet by William Shakespeare using critical theory. But before that, let's have overview first about classical theory and its approaches. The classical theory implies that every complex concept has a classical analysis, where a classical analysis of a concept is a proposition giving metaphysically necessary and jointly sufficient conditions for being in the extension across possible worlds for that concept. Classical theory has two approaches. It is moral philosophical approach and the historical biographical approach. The moral philosophical approach is as old as classical Greek and Roman critics. Plato, for example, emphasized moralism and utilitarianism. Horace stressed that literature should be delightful and instructive. Among its most famous exemplars are the commentators of the age of neoclassicism in English literature, particularly Samuel Johnson. The important thing is the moral or philosophical teaching. On its highest plane, this is not superficially didactic, though it may at first seem so. In the larger sense, all great literature teaches. The critic who employs the moral philosophical approach insists on ascertaining and stating what is taught. And the work is any degree significant or intelligible, this meaning will be there. Historical biographical approach, its focus is on the life, times, and environment of the author, and this approach deals with the effects of these factors on the work of art. Most of literary works can be analyzed in the light of historical biographical method. A reader studies the work in accordance with the period in which the work is produced. Thus, the values and the perception of the reader's own age are put aside. Historical approach or historical biographical approach establishes a bridge between the reader and the worlds of the author. The life of the author, the historical events, and the values of his age help us understand the work, and in a similar way, the literary work gives information of the author and his own period. So now, let's talk about the story that I've chosen. Help me to examine or analyze on it. But before that, I'll give you the summary or the background of the Hamlet. The ghost of the King of Denmark tells his son Hamlet to avenge his murder by killing the new king, Hamlet's uncle. Hamlet feigns madness, contemplates life and death, and seeks revenge. His uncle, fearing for his life, also devises plots to kill Hamlet. The play ends with a duel, during which the king, queen, Hamlet's opponent, and Hamlet himself are all killed. So now we can identify what approach using in this story. So for me, it is moral philosophical approach. So as what I have read, Hamlet is often perceived as a philosophical character. Some of the most prominent philosophical theories in Hamlet are relativism, existentialism, and skepticism. Hamlet expresses a relativist idea when he says to Rosencrantz, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." The idea that nothing is real except in the mind of the individual finds its roots in the Greek sophists, who argued that since nothing can be perceived except through the senses and all men felt and sensed things differently, truth was entirely relative. There was no absolute truth. This same line of Hamlet also introduces theories of existentialism. A double meaning can be read into the word is, which introduces the question of whether anything is or can be if thinking doesn't make it so. This is tied into his to be or not to be speech, where to be can be read as question of existence. Hamlet's contemplation of suicide in this scene, however, is more religious than philosophical. He believes that he will continue to exist after death. So let's talk about the dramatic structure. In creating Hamlet, Shakespeare broke several rules, one of the largest being in the rule of action over character. In his day, plays were usually expected to follow the advice of Aristotle in his Poetics, which declared that a drama should not focus on character so much as action. The highlights of Hamlet, however, are not the action scenes, but the soliloquies, wherein Hamlet reveals his movies and thoughts to the audience. Also, unlike Shakespeare's other plays, there is no strong subplot. All plot forks are directly connected to the main vein of Hamlet struggling to gain revenge. The play is full of seeming discontinuities and irregularities of action. At one point, Hamlet is resolved to kill Claudius. In the next scene, he is suddenly tame. Scholars still debate whether these odd plot turns are mistakes or intentional additions to add to the play's theme of confusion and duality. So in religion, the play makes several references to both Catholicism and Protestantism, the two most powerful theological forces of the time in Europe. The ghost describes himself as being in purgatory and as having died without receiving his last rites. This, along with Ophelia's burial ceremony, which is uniquely Catholic, make up most of the play's Catholic connections. Some scholars have pointed that revenge tragedies were traditionally Catholic, possibly because of their sources, Spain and Italy, both Catholic nations. Scholars have pointed out that knowledge of the play's Catholicism can reveal important paradoxes in Hamlet's decision process. According to Catholic doctrine, the strongest duty is to God and family. Hamlet's father being killed and calling for revenge thus offers a contradiction. Thus he avenge his father and kill Claudius, or does he leave the vengeance to God as his religion requires? So how about the critical approaches of Hamlet? From its premiere at the turn of the 17th century, Hamlet has remained Shakespeare's best known, most imitated, and most analyzed play. The character of Hamlet played a critical role in Sigmund Freud's explanation of the Oedipus complex. Even within the narrower field of literature, the play's influence has been strong. As Fox writes, no other character's name in Shakespeare plays and few in literature have come to embody an attitude to life and been converted into a noun in this way. So I think that would be all, and before that, there are some lessons that Hamlet gives us. We can take two lessons from Hamlet. The first one is that if people let anger and revenge get the best of them, they can cause damage. The second one is in life you will be able to get away with something for long but not forever. We learn this lesson through various actions committed by various characters. Those main characters are the Ghost, Claudius, and Hamlet. The readers are first introduced to the Ghost, old King Hamlet. The guards had spotted the Ghost before several times and noticed that he appeared just like King Hamlet. King Hamlet was killed by his own brother. The Ghost returns to the palace over and over again until he speaks to his son. He is in dying need to let him know how is it that he died. King Hamlet was angry about his death and wanted someone to seek revenge. So I hope you get some lessons from the story that I've chosen. This is Mary Charlene Nieves, BSA3 from Black 2.